I never imagined I would one day feel grateful for my heart condition, yet life has a peculiar way of turning circumstances around. My name is Daniel, and 6 months ago, I moved into what I believed was my dream home in Oak Ridge Estates, a charming suburban neighborhood filled with perfectly manicured lawns and immaculate sidewalks. What the real estate agent conveniently omitted was the iron-fisted control exerted by the Homeowners Association, or, as I now refer to it, the Kingdom of Karen. Karen Winters, the HOA president, had already earned a notorious reputation among residents long before my arrival. She was a woman in her mid-50s with an impeccably styled blonde bob that appeared to be held in permanent submission by hairspray. Much like how she sought to maintain absolute control over the neighborhood, my first encounter with her occurred just 3 days after moving in, when she left a bright neon pink notice on my door complaining that my garbage can had been visible from the street a full 4 hours before collection day. "Just following the rules, Daniel," she said with a saccharine smile when I attempted to reason with her. "Rules keep our property values high and our community beautiful. You'll understand once you've been here longer." What I eventually came to understand was that Karen did not merely enforce the rules, she derived an almost euphoric pleasure from discovering violations. Her daily inspection walks became legendary, with residents hurriedly scrambling to avoid her sharp eyes that could detect a single blade of grass half an inch too tall from 50 paces away. My medical situation only complicated matters further. 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with cardiac arrhythmia that required constant monitoring. My doctor prescribed a portable heart monitor, which I had to wear continuously for 30 days. The device needed to be plugged in each night to charge and transmit data to my healthcare provider. It was not particularly obtrusive, just a small white box with a few leads attached to my chest, but it was literally keeping me alive by alerting emergency services if my heart rhythm became dangerous. The trouble started when I received a certified letter from the HOA, citing unauthorized medical equipment visible from the street. Apparently, the charging dock for my heart monitor, placed on my bedroom windowsill because it was the only spot near my bed with an accessible outlet, violated some obscure bylaw regarding aesthetically displeasing objects visible through windows. I immediately called the HOA office and explained the situation to the administrator, who promised to note it in my file, yet the very next day, Karen herself appeared at my door, rulebook in hand, reading verbatim from Section 12, Paragraph 4 about window displays. "I understand it's medical equipment, Daniel," she said in a patronizing tone, "but rules are rules. Perhaps you could move it to another room, or maybe place it behind a decorative screen. The neighbors have been complaining." I seriously doubted any neighbors had actually complained about a small white charging dock that was barely visible unless someone was deliberately peering in with binoculars. "Karen, this is essential medical equipment. I need it within reach of my bed, and that's the only working outlet." She pursed her lips, forming a network of disapproving wrinkles around her mouth. "Well, I'm sure you can find a solution that doesn't involve breaking our covenants. Maybe buy an extension cord. You have until Friday to remedy the situation." I decided the wisest course was to ignore her, hoping she would redirect her energy toward someone else's bird feeder or unapproved mailbox color. That proved to be my first mistake. Friday came and went, and I continued charging my monitor by the window. On Saturday morning, while I was at the grocery store, Karen apparently decided to take matters into her own hands. I returned home to find a new violation notice taped to my door, but this one was different. It included a photograph of my empty windowsill with the heart monitor dock conspicuously missing. Panic surged through me as I rushed inside. The charging dock had vanished from the windowsill. I searched around my bedroom, wondering if it had somehow fallen, but found nothing. Then I noticed my slightly ajar side window, the one without a screen that I occasionally opened for fresh air. I immediately called Karen. "Did you enter my house and take my heart monitor charger?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady despite my rising blood pressure, something my missing monitor would normally have detected. "I didn't enter your house," she replied with indignation, "but I did notice that the offending item remained in your window despite our conversation. Since it was within reach from outside, I simply removed the violation. It's in the HOA office for safekeeping. I nearly hit the floor. Karen, that offending item is medical equipment prescribed by my cardiologist. I need it plugged in at all times when I'm home. You can't just take it. Well, you can pick it up on Monday when the office opens, she said firmly. Consider this a learning opportunity about following our community standards. That was the moment I realized I was not dealing with a reasonable person. Karen, I need that back immediately. It's not just a charger, it's actively monitoring my heart condition and transmitting data to my doctor. Rules are rules, Daniel, she responded with a dismissive tone. The office opens at 9 o'clock a.m. on Monday. I hung up and immediately called the non-emergency police line to report the theft of essential medical equipment. The officer who arrived took my statement seriously, especially once I explained the device's critical function. He contacted Karen, who initially refused to return it, insisting it was purely an HOA matter, not a police matter. The situation escalated rapidly when my cardiologist's office called my cell phone. They had received an alert that my monitor had been disconnected for over 2 hours, a potentially dangerous situation. When I explained what had happened, they were appalled and immediately contacted emergency services themselves. Within 30 minutes, my quiet suburban street was lined with a police car, an ambulance, and increasingly concerned neighbors gathering on their perfectly manicured lawns. The police officer went to Karen's house, where she finally admitted she had taken the charging dock, but insisted she was within her rights as HOA president to remove violations from the community. What happened next was both horrifying and, in a strange way, deeply satisfying. As Karen argued with the officer on her porch, still refusing to return my property, I began to feel lightheaded. The paramedics, who had been monitoring me since their arrival, immediately detected an irregular heartbeat, the very condition my monitor was meant to track. Sir, we need to get you to the hospital right now, one paramedic said urgently while helping me onto a stretcher. Your heart rhythm is destabilizing. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw the police officer place handcuffs on Karen, who was still protesting about property values and community standards. Karen Winters, you're under arrest for theft of medical equipment and reckless endangerment, he announced loudly enough for the growing crowd of neighbors to hear. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was Karen's face, a mask of shock and indignation as the officer recited her Miranda rights in front of the entire neighborhood she had terrorized for years. The hospital stay was brief. Thankfully, my condition stabilized once they connected me to proper monitoring equipment. My cardiologist was furious when I explained what had happened and immediately wrote a strongly worded letter to the HOA board and the district attorney's office, detailing the potential life-threatening consequences of Karen's actions. Karen was charged with criminal trespass, theft, and reckless endangerment, the latter a felony given the medical nature of the equipment she had taken. Her defense that she was acting in her official capacity as HOA president crumbled when the HOA bylaws were examined and found to contain nothing that granted the president authority to remove items from private property, regardless of visibility from the street. The judge was particularly unsympathetic, especially given Karen's complete lack of remorse during the preliminary hearing. Mrs. Winters, the judge said with clear disbelief, you disconnected a heart monitor because it offended your aesthetic sensibilities. This court takes a very dim view of placing property values above human life. The final blow came when Karen's attorney advised her to accept a plea deal, 6 months of house arrest, a $5,000 fine, and restitution for my medical bills. But the true cherry on top was the requirement that she resign from the HOA board and be prohibited from serving on any homeowners association for 10 years. When the judge announced the terms, Karen's face contorted in utter disbelief, her carefully sprayed hair seeming to deflate along with her sense of power. But Your Honor, she sputtered, her voice trembling with indignation, I've been president for 15 years. The community needs me. What the community needs, Mrs. Winters, the judge replied firmly, is leadership that respects both the law and human life. Perhaps during your house arrest, you can reflect on the difference between serving a community and controlling it. as Karen was led away by her attorney, visibly shaking and on the verge of tears. I caught her glancing at me with a look of pure hatred, but for once, all her rules, all her power, all her petty tyranny could not protect her from the consequences of her actions, and somehow, that felt like the most valuable property in the entire neighborhood.